Hey guys, this is Ash and you're watching WriterGAsh. So today I'm going to be doing a book talk on We Hunt the Flames. So this is the beautiful Illumicrate edition of We Hunt the Flames. As you can see, the foiling on the cover with the words, fantastic, it like shimmers, and then this is the highlight of the book where the edges seem like they kind of blend in from the cover, and it's just beautiful and fantastic. It's one of the most beautiful books on my shelf. With that being said, let's talk about the actual book. So, We and the Flames is a very popular book, and I didn't like it as much as I thought I would. I went into it expecting it to be my next favorite book, which I think was where I went wrong, because you don't give a book that much to live up to. But I thought it was going to be amazing, and it was great. It just didn't hit the mark. Personally, I think it's a 3-star book for me, but I can see why a lot of people love it. It's the whole story about Zafira and Nasir is the prince of the kingdom, and he's also a assassin, Hashashin, if I'm saying that right. And Zafira is a huntress who has been masquerading as a man, as a hunter, and getting food for her kingdom. Her kingdom has her caliphate, which is like a part of the kingdom that Nasir is the prince of. Now, her caliphate specifically is extremely sexist. Basically, anytime a woman does anything that's outside of the home, they marry her off so she loses her freedom. And that made my blood boil so bad. It's like a trigger for me. Sexism is a trigger for me, but it exists everywhere, so it's impossible to avoid, and it makes my blood boil. I just want to punch certain characters in books when they act in a sexist way, and it brings out the violent side of me. And when I say violent, it just means I'm gonna seethe in my head and not most of the times even say anything out loud. It's just, it upsets me to my core. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, but Zafira has always like hidden who she was to avoid the consequences of being a woman who was providing for her entire village. Because if they knew, they'd probably react very badly, because someone was like a baker's daughter was gonna take over her father's business, so they forced her to get married and then put a random guy in her place to run the business. And this is just like from the very beginning of the book, so none of the spoilers, but that's like the kind of world she lives in. And then Nasir is an assassin who basically does his father's bidding. Now, we basically follow Zafira, who has been tasked by the Silver Witch to go release magic, Nasir, who's been sent by his father to intercept her and get the thing for him, and then assassinate everyone who's there. And this book comes with a host of side characters that are fantastic and that I really loved. And I can't say much more without spoiling it, but if you have read it and you go into the spoiler section, I'll talk more about why it was a 3-star book for me rather than more. Okay, spoiler alert from here on out. Please go away if you haven't read the book. Alright, so the characters in this book for me fell a little short. I think the story was great. I think it progressed well. It had good pacing. It took enough time for the world building, but Nasir and Zafira both kind of fell short. Nasir especially. With Zafira, I was struggling to, fully sympathize with her, fully like understand her and fully feel immersed in her story. But with Nasir, I couldn't even do it. I couldn't come to like him as a person, to like his story. Zafira I like, but overall they're both not characters that would make me want to continue with the series. The characters who do make me want to continue with the series are the side characters, Benjamin, Kifa, and Altair. Altair is like great. I love him. He's witty and smart, and he's great. Nasir is very woe is me, and on top of that, like, he claims to love Kulsum and then discards her. Like, yes, he finds out she never loved him and she used him, and that can hurt, but also he gives zero shits about anyone and acts like he does. He acts like other people are being used against him, or he says other people are being used against him, and he's doing these things because his father is like twisting his hand. But he doesn't act that way to me. He doesn't seem to give a shit about anyone but himself. That's the vibe I'm getting from him. With Saphira, I really did like her. I don't know. I just didn't connect with her. That's where I was struggling with her part of the story. But regardless, so Saphira goes on this quest with her childhood best friend, Dean, who gets killed the first chance we get. And that just felt extremely cliche. Like the childhood best friend, lover getting X'd off so the rest of the story can progress, and so the female protagonist feels all alone. And it was very predictable how that line was gonna go. Like the moment Dean was like, oh, I'm going. Okay. And here, like, you know, she didn't try to convince him otherwise. She didn't like say you can't. At first, it kind of gave me the vibe where like she was very like sure of herself and willing to be like, you know, set her boundaries. When she told him he can't, like, I expected her to full on blast at him and say, you can't go because you're not prepared for something like this. I'm the hunter, you're not. And he goes with her anyway, and then he dies within the first 15 minutes. And later on, we learn it was an accident. And she's like, so he lost his life for an accident. That was like an anticlimactic thing. And there were a lot of moments like that. There were a lot of scenes that didn't pull through the rest of the book. Like, I followed the plot, but none of the scenes were like, oh my God, I don't know what to do now. What the heck is happening? Nothing made me feel. A lot of the time I go to these books to feel something, and that wasn't happening here. That's where it kept falling short. At the end, when we have the lion come in, when Saphira has gotten the Jawat, it's the Jawat, right? I keep opening the book because it's got a like guide for different like words, and it's got a dictionary and a character name thing in the back, so it's been really helpful that I forget certain things. Javarat. So she gets the Javarat, and Benjamin dies, and Altaria is held captive basically by the lion, and they just go away, and she's optimistic. Like, come on. None of that felt real. And I don't know how to make myself feel like any of this was real. I can't lose myself in this world yet. There is another book. I'm excited to see how the story ends, but I don't know if I want to follow Zafira and Nasir. I just wasn't connecting with them. I don't know if this book talk made much sense or any sense at all. I just wanted to express what I was struggling with this book. Like I said, I did enjoy the storyline, which is why I am excited to see where it goes. And I did like certain things about Nasir too. I did like Zafira as a person. I just want to make that really clear. I just was struggling to connect with her. With Nasir, I didn't like him as a person quite yet, and I'm hoping that improves in the next book because I can see the potential there. And the Silver Witch thing, just like seriously, like if she just was willing to abandon her son like that. She's like, no one's going back. What the fuck? What kind of a mother are you? And like, what the, like, that's the thing. Like, all of these French, like what bothered me most was how all of these relationships were said to have like so much impact on these people. They're like, oh, we're a group, we are close, we depend on each other, and then they don't care about each other. Altair, I felt like, was the only person. Altair and Benjamin were the only people who actually cared about the people in their group. Altair loved Nasir, even though Nasir hated him, and even though he hated Nasir himself because he blamed him for their mother's death. But I think Altair was a genuinely good person, and how it ended for him in this book left a bitter taste in my mouth. I feel it's, and also like for the queen to leave her throne to Nasir when Altair would make a much better ruler. Like, what was your justification for completely ignoring one son? For not telling your kid that he has an older brother? Like, what could be the reason? And I'm hoping those questions get answered, because Altair is a much better potential sultan than Nasir is. Now, let's talk about the romance aspect between Zafira and Nasir. That too felt super forced. Like, one moment there's nothing there, and the next they can't avoid the attraction. And her like attachment to Dean, like at first she was unwilling to let go of his cloak and like attached to his ring, and the next she just forgets it. I get like healing and moving on. There was no healing and moving on. It was like that. That's not how you move on. And same with Nasir and Kulsum. Like, at first he was very broken up about everything with her. He was blaming himself, and then yes, he learned she was using him. Even after that, he was kind of still blaming himself. He's like, oh, no one loves me, blah blah blah. And he does feel that way later, like no one really loves him. But then, like, even then, his guilt towards Kulsum just like vanishes the second he starts feeling attraction towards Zafira. That's what it feels like to me. And it just felt very shallow. There wasn't any depth to their bond. I think the other characters did truly feel like real people, and even Zafira to some extent, but Nasir's relationships felt very shallow, and he felt like a shallow person to me. I don't know why, and that's where I'm struggling. Okay, so that is it for my thoughts on We Hunt the Flames. I know it wasn't very substantial. I don't talk about much of the plot points because they were pretty straightforward. Like, it's pretty much they get on the ship, they get attacked by Ifrits, Dean dies, Nasira passes out from heat stroke. The two, Altair and Nasir, help her, and then they start going further in their journey together, like form an unlikely alliance as expected. And then Benjamin and Kifa meet them. Benjamin is a really nice person in my opinion, and we later learned like Benjamin and Altair are like brothers. They have a really close bond. They've always been close. Anyway, but like the five of them go on together. They come across the lion of the night who attacks them. They barely survive. They leave. They find the Javarat. Benjamin dies, and then they all escape. Everyone else is basically escapes, and then on their escape, Altair is captured, and the rest were like, oh, Nasir and Zafira are like, oh, we should go help him, and everyone's like, oh, we can't go back. And Nasir is insistent for a split second before he too gives up. And that's the entirety of the story. I don't know what else to say. So that is it for the book talk. If you guys have any insights on things I might be missing about this book, which is very likely because it's only my first read. Sometimes during the first read, I don't catch a lot of things, so it's very possible. So if you have any recommendations of how I could enjoy the second book more, highly appreciate it. And he said, that is it. And I will see you later. Ta-da!